Hello there, everyone. This is Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and welcome back to the Mad Science Lab podcast. Hello there, everyone. Today we're going to continue on with the My Thoughts series. My thoughts on my team today is the Dallas Cowboys, and here to break down Dallas with me is Ian Hartitz. Ian, thank you very much for joining me. Free Duke Johnson.
Yes, sir. Always free, dude. He's a little bit too free right now. Never actually met a free agent, but maybe one of these days, man. But yeah, appreciate you having me on. Down to talk some Cowboys. Always a great day to be great, especially talking some ball in the middle of May, man. So I've been doing some team previews myself over at MB Fantasy Life. Excited to break this down.
All right, that was going to be my next thing. I was going to ask you to tell everyone where they can find you, but like you said, MB Fantasy Life. You got anything else you want to promote?
Nah, we just chilling, man. You know how it goes. So I appreciate you, though.
MB Fantasy Life. Fair enough. All right, let's get right into it then. We have a relatively easy quarterback room to break down with Dak Prescott as the starter and Cooper Rush, who the Cowboys fans hope they never see again. Dak, where do you think he is right now? 6 to 8 range, closer to 12, higher to top? Where is it?
About the same, man. He's actually going a little bit closer to that line. I mean, I think people are maybe a little bit freaked out about some of those early offseason comments from Mike McCarthy wanting to get back to run the damn ball, talking about how, Kellen Moore is young. He's in the business of trying to have the best offense. McCarthy doesn't care about that. He wants to have the best team out there. So I think ultimately that's just going to be a lot of March coach speak. We get these guys just answering questions in whatever way they want to during the offseason when it ultimately comes down to it. Because if you look at the Cowboys last year, they were 25th in pass rate over expected. I mean, this was a run heavy team last season already. So for them to go even further in that direction, honestly, would be surprising me. But the only, quote unquote problem with Dak is just that we haven't seen him be the same monster post nasty ankle break on the ground. And I think that's where a lot of his early career fantasy production was coming from. And the other side of the equation was the Cowboys in 2018 through, 2020, really not having the sort of defense that they've been able to have ever since drafting Micah Parsons in 2021. So, 2019, he finished as a QB3 in fantasy points per game. 2021, before he got hurt, he was the overall QB1 because we had that combination of a pass-happy offense, a mobile Dak, and a not that great defense out there. Every single thing was going Dak's way. But these past 2 years, man, QB8 and QB14. So he's fine. I have him ranked as my QB11 if you look over at Underdog Fantasy, pulling up the latest ADP data right now. But yeah, going off the board is QB11. So he's a rock solid low end borderline QB1. But man, the one thing I'm just kind of learning with these drafts and looking at the history of quarterback scoring here, at least in recent years, is I don't think that Dak and even Tua and Kirk Cousins and these guys, not the type of quarterbacks I want to be reaching on. So I've been deploying more of a first or last strategy at the position this year. If I am going to be, spending an early round pick on a quarterback, let's make it Jalen Hurts or a Josh Allen or someone who has, been ranked that high, is going that high for a really good reason. They're a dual threat alien. I think this middle class of pocket passers is being pushed up just a bit too far. So again, I think the positional ranking with Dak is perfectly fine, but when you can literally get guys like Matthew Stafford 60 plus picks after him, I think that discrepancy is a bit too wide.
Yeah, you're 100% right, man. The days of late round QB seem to be gone. Everyone's losing their freaking mind. Who did I have on? Larky. It was either Josh Larky or Dario Offstein from Player Profiler, and they were saying QB7 is going this year where QB2 has gone in past years. The ADP has just fucking gone ridiculous. I like Dak when he does fall. I don't want to reach on him. He has been falling because, like you said, those comments, fucking McCarthy's a fucking idiot, but that's a whole different story. But I like him if I can get him late, but you're right. He's just not someone I'm reaching for. I'm probably employing the same strategy. I'm going to be going for one of the high-end ones, or I'm going to be passing. QB has become the new version of tight end, I think. If you don't get the elite one, just wait.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the more interesting running back room here. We've got Tony Pollard, who's gone way through the roof in ADP. And we have a collection of backups here with Malik Davis, who showed in limited playing time last year that he was more than serviceable. Ronald Jones, who I imagine will probably not even make the frickin' roster, and Deuce Vaughn, who is related to one of the coaches and is shorter than I am, and I don't know what the hell to make out of him. What do you make of this room? I mean, Tony Pollard's obviously the gem here, but what do you think?
Dude, the problem with Deuce Vaughn is they gave him like number 42. Like, could you have picked a worse number? Like, just having one in the 40s. Like, I understand Darren Sproles made 43
Oh, I
work.
thought
So,
Darren Sproles.
so yeah, if you wanted to give him that as like an honor thing, that'd be fine. But my God, the guy's name is Deuce. Can we give him? I guess giving him the Emmitt Smith 22 maybe wouldn't be the best move for a 6th-round pick, but
Fair enough.
not exactly expecting the most out of Deuce this year. But again, he's a 6th-round pick, so cool enough story. I'm with you. I would not be surprised if all Rojo gets cut. It just makes me wonder, man, if we could ultimately see Ezekiel Elliott here get back in action.
Yeah.
We had that murmur about him maybe going to Buccaneers or something. It would be kind of funny in an ironic way if, Zeke goes to Tampa and Fournette ends up coming back to Dallas. So I do think Pollard could slide a little bit if they add someone else. But if not, man, like it's really tough to keep him out of that top 5. I think there's a pretty clear tier gap after these guys where, again, we got McCaffrey, Bijan, Austin Eckler in some order. And then looking at guys like Saquon, Pollard, and Josh Jacobs, I mean, I would love to see guys like Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry get 50-plus targets to go along with their heavy rushing workloads. But that's not a given. And with Pollard, even though he did come into the league, more so viewed as a scat back, played that wide receiver, Antonio Gibson-esque role a lot of his time at Memphis. But when Zeke has missed time, few and far between, but when he has, man, we fed Pollard the rock like a true workhorse. I mean, in those 3 games without Zeke, 90% snap rate, 87% snap rate. Most recently dipped down to 65%, but that still came with 25 touches. So, haven't even mentioned how if you pull out any stat you want, Pollard's going to find his name in the top 5 of that. So incredible running back. They got him on the franchise tag. Maybe we see a bit of a move like it did with DeMarco Murray back in 2014. Feed the damn guy till the wheels fall off because you're not even sure how much longer he's going to be there. So Pollard for me is my RB5. To your point, he's been moving up the ADP board, especially over at Underdog Fantasy. So going as the RB7 over there, I will say, my preferred strategy so far has been around that, hero RB, anchor RB, get one of those studs in the first few rounds. And honestly, like the ones I've been most willing to get is when one of Tony Pollard or Josh Jacobs even falls to the early parts of round 3.
You said RB5. If Zeke comes back, how far do you think he falls down for you? Still pretty easily an RB1?
Yeah, I just think he goes down more to that, Ramondre Stevenson, Travis Etienne, Breece Hall kind of borderline RB1 line. I think then I'd be more willing to draft guys like Nick Chubb, like Josh Jacobs ahead of Pollard at that point. But we're still talking about legit RB1. I mean, that is the crazy thing because lest we forget, Pollard was a legit RB1 last year without being able to lead his own backfield in touches. They still found a way to get Zeke the ball more times than him. The funny stat I found was we had 13 running backs last year, have at least 10 touchdowns. Pollard, easily the longest average length of touchdown at 25.1 yards, and the shortest, Ezekiel Elliott, at just 3.6. So
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I remember that Falcons game from a couple years ago. Zeke sent that linebacker like to the freaking shadow realm. Like, I get it. Like, $90 million, has the expectations higher as they should be for Zeke, but that man is a monster in short yardage situation. So I'm not trying to say Pollard can be that good, but, from the 1 yard line, you can be 70% as good in those situations and still end up scoring a lot of touchdowns. So Pollard, again, just crazy to honestly have one of the best running backs from an efficiency standpoint. We haven't seen that fall off even when his workload has increased to this point. Now, potentially getting one of the more fantasy-friendly roles in the league.
Do you think he can hold up to the increased workload? Last year, the Cowboys seemed really reluctant to actually give him all the touches. They seemed to think he was kind of fragile. You see a DeAndre Swift kind of fragility to him here? Or do you think he just, there's also the leg injury to factor in. You worried at all?
So for leg injury, I'm not. It's one of these things, the tightrope recovery. I did an article back in, I think it was March, where I basically looked at all these outstanding injuries and multiple reports since then saying that he should be 100% ready to go by training camp. All the doctors I follow and trust in the fantasy football world agree with that sentiment. So I'm not worried about the injury. In terms of the workload, like I agree. I don't think that the Cowboys necessarily want him to be this 300, 350 carry guy out there. But again, in the small sample size we have without Zeke, Zeke, they have been willing to really feature Pollard. And I'm fine with getting more of an Austin Eckler-esque role where we do only have 200 to 220 carries, as long as it's on the back of all those targets, which we know he can handle. So that's a big thing in fantasy land, man, especially in full point PPR. Just historically, one target is worth about 2.7 carries in terms of those expected points. So, when you look at those things like, okay, are we sure we're getting enough carries? Really comes down to more times than not getting those targets. I mean, Alvin Kamara as a rookie, I don't even think he touched 100 and he was still getting over, top 12 production because of that pass game role.
Malik Davis, Deuce Vaughn. Do you think either of them factors in, maybe takes away some of the between the 20s touches, take a little bit of the workload off, or is this a one-man show?
Maybe a little bit, but I think it's going to be a one-man show. I mean, look, there's really no – Najee Harris as a rookie was sometimes getting those 100% snap games. James Conner over these past 2 years has been one of those guys. But generally in the year 2023, we're always going to see at least one other running back involved to at least a small extent. I don't think it'll be a fantasy viable role. I mean, some of these guys, Antonio Gibson's of the world, I think deserve that flex with benefits, kind of moniker where, okay, you might be able to use them and then God forbid the first RB goes down. Now we're talking about a quality handcuff to have. I don't quite see that with this group right now. If anyone's going to stand out, and if I'm going to throw a dart at any of these backups, it would be Malik Davis in the later stages. But, wouldn't be surprised at all, especially if they find out that Rojo isn't the guy for them. If we do see, again, that Zeke reunion or a Fournette or a Hunt or one of those guys add to the picture. But again, I don't think that's going to severely take away from Pollard. I'm just not as confident in these backups holding on to those roles.
Yeah, I definitely think that's more likely than any of these other guys factor in. Moving on to the receivers, we have the prize of the bunch, CeeDee Lamb, and then a pretty damn confusing room here. Brandon Cooks is perennially undervalued, but is there anything left in the tank? Michael Gallup is the injury risk that never seems to get there. Simi Fehoko, Kavonte Turpin, and Jalen Brooks, who the hell knows? And then we've seemed to have forgotten about Jalen Tolbert so much that he didn't even make this depth chart. I know CeeDee Lamb's pretty much consensus top 5, 10, depending on format, whether it's dynasty or redraft. What do you think of this room as a whole? And, is there anyone here worth taking a shot at besides CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah, I got CeeDee as my wide receiver 8, which is right where he's going, underdog right now. I just think that really wide receiver this year, I think the top 10 are pretty clear cut. Maybe you can move guys around a spot or two, but Jefferson, Chase, Tyreek, Kupp, Diggs, AJB, Devontae, and I think CeeDee's right there. So if you wanted to argue that AJB has a bit more target competition, Devontae Smith, I'm not going to call you crazy, but again, top 8 for CeeDee, whether he's 6 or 7 or 8, makes sense to me. So yeah, dude's an absolute baller. Behind him though, man, I don't exactly get why Brandon Cooks is getting such a big benefit of the doubt here. To your point, I mean, yeah, we'll see how much he has left in the tank because that really wasn't good last season, and we can blame it on the Houston Texans quarterback room, sure, but wasn't exactly holding him back in 2021. So when we get these wide receivers who are turning 30, which Cooks will be in September, we do historically see that's when these wide receivers start breaking bad. So Gallup, meanwhile, still just 27. We weren't exactly expecting him to have his best season ever last year, coming off of that ACL tear. I was surprised he was even on the field as quick as he was. Would make a lot of sense if Gallup actually is the one that comes out, looks a little bit more like his former self, and man, probably assumes the role as the number 2 wide receiver in this offense that he's being paid for. Lest we forget, the whole reason why they traded Amari Cooper in the first place was because they felt, I guess, more confident in Gallup, enough so to give him that $50 million plus deal. So Brandon Cooks right now in the draft, I mean, he's going next to guys like, Jordan Addison, Deontay Johnson, Jahan Dotson.
Could you imagine Addison if the Cowboys had taken one of the rookies? Could you imagine Addison as the 2 here, or Quentin Johnson or JSN? God.
Quentin Johnson especially, man, just have like a bigger body guy in that group that could have gone outside and gotten some, because again, so that's the one thing with Cooks, like he does have that field stretching element that's been missing from this Cowboys offense. For like, I remember when they were bringing in Devin Smith from the Cowboys even to try to just give them some speed on the outside, because obviously CeeDee can stretch the field, he can do everything you want out there, but just giving that Will Fuller-esque player who I'd love to see him sign with literally anybody, but maybe the Cowboys. So from that standpoint, I do think Cooks is a good fit, but I'm just not sure how much, again, gas he still has to really stretch those fields at age 30. So for me, Cooks, where he's going, is just a bit too pricey for my taste. I'd much rather take a chance with Michael Gallup well after that. I mean, right now, let's see, Cooks is going pick 85. Michael Gallup is going pick 143. Like,
Jeez.
again, if you want to say Cooks over Gallup, like, I'm not going to disagree with you overall, but, go through those projections, and I think they're going to be a hell of a lot closer than what that current ADP
for sure.
differential
Yeah, the
is.
values. Yeah, that's somehow Brandon Cooks has become overvalued, which he wasn't. It's the difference. He's still in Texas, but moves from Houston to Dallas, and all of a sudden he goes from the most undervalued to now he's overvalued. Go figure. The tight end room. I really kind of liked Jake Ferguson and I liked Peyton Hendershot, and then they decided to draft Luke Schoonmaker. I'm a Michigan fan, not a huge Schoonmaker fan. I worry that they're going to take 3 tight ends that I thought could have the potential to be decent if they were given Dalton Schultz's role. And I think they might be turning this into a tight end by committee and ruining all 3 of them. I hope not, but what do you think is going to happen here?
I mean, I will say with Shoemaker, I know he caught a lot of people by, I think, surprise with that selection. It wasn't someone I saw in pretty much anybody's, like, even top 3-5 list before.
Because he sucks.
Well, there is a guy named Matt Waldman who I do respect his opinion a lot in these guys. And Matt said that Shoemaker was number 2 in this class for his book. So I'm not ruling out him sucking just yet. As we know, unfortunately, I've had to watch your damn Michigan offense score far too many points against my Buckeyes over these past 2 years. But we've seen guys like Nico Collins, like Donovan Peoples-Jones, really, not saying they've had the best NFL careers, but talented receivers that haven't gotten a ton of pass game opportunities because of the way that Michigan usually goes about moving football. So
that's the way. That's your code. Your way of pleasantly saying Jim Harbaugh sucks. That's what you're saying. Jim Harbaugh sucks.
Technically, Ryan Day still has a higher winning percentage against Michigan than Harbaugh does against Ohio State. But that's the
Jim
last.
Harbaugh sucks.
That's the last thing I'm going to say with that argument.
No, I'm a Michigan fan, and Jim Harbaugh sucks.
What do you mean? He's got you guys in a great position.
Beating up on crappy competition with the exception of Ohio State.
Okay.
That's our Super Bowl every year. Then we get killed when we face the real competition. But I mean, for fantasy alone, like you said, these players who do absolutely nothing, like I wouldn't be surprised if Ronnie Bell has a decent NFL career because they do nothing at Michigan. Like, look, Zach Charbonnet was so much better at UCLA. How did I turn this into a Michigan podcast? Sorry, go right ahead.
Oh no, I was leading us right down there, man. It's I respect that we can actually be a little bit civil with it, how things have gone over the years. But okay, long story short, in this Cowboys room, I think you're right with the original point that it just looks like a committee to me because last year when we did see Dalton Schultz miss a few games early on in the year, that's exactly what happened, splitting the reps between Ferguson and Hendershot almost equally. And you don't use a second round pick on Shoemaker just to sit him on the bench there. So I think it's gonna be a 3-way committee, and it's a shame because honestly, like over these past 3 years, Dalton Schultz, I think has been one of the more mid tight ends in the league that has actually put up like good fantasy numbers. I mean, the amount of times that Dalton Schultz is catching a touchdown, I'm either complimenting Dak's throw or the play design first, it just seemed like it was all the time out there. That said, though, in terms of just expected PPR points per game, so not what they did, but just what their workload said. Schultz in 2020, tight end 14, then the tight end 9, then the tight end 5 last season. So it's one of those situations where no, I don't think we need to go out of our way to draft any of these guys, and the history of rookie tight ends is so brutal as well. But hey, if we're sitting here, Sunday night after week 1 and we're looking at, the play-by-play data and stuff afterwards, and all of a sudden, whether it's Shoemaker or Ferguson or Hendershot, one of those guys all of a sudden taking over that job, having that 80% plus route rate, then they're going to be on the cover of those waiver wire articles because, again, this would be the offense that we want to invest in the highly used tight end. But, again, in fantasy land especially, if you have more than one tight end consistently being involved, usually have 0, tend to think that's the way it's going to be in Dallas.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I know it's early. I've been using Best Ball ADP as, what'll be the eventual redraft ADP. If you had to take a guess based on where you think they'll go, who's someone on this roster you're going to be targeting at a value and owning on a lot of teams?
I think it's Michael Gallup. He has been the one so far that I've been willing to take some shots with. I mean, former 1,000-yard wide receiver, and he's shown some really good chemistry with Dak Prescott over the years. So again, last year wasn't great, but I think with the injury context added on, it's a lot easier to be more lenient with the guys. So, Cook's coming in and take some extra pressure off. So, I mean, there were times, man, over the years where I think we all knew Cooper was better, but Gallup was really treated as more of a 1B, 2 Gallup's 1A in that offense than maybe most gave credit for. So again, just seeing Gallup right now, wide receiver 64. I mean, going behind guys like Adam Thielen, Romeo Dobbs, Jalen Hyatt. So I just think that's far too big of a discount. And where he's going in the draft is great because honestly, and it could be more of a best ball thing. I know at Underdog, these wide receivers are flying off the board far faster than the running backs, but there really has almost emerged this like wide receiver dead zone. Honestly, I think it kind of starts when Brandon Cooks is on the board, because you're looking at those guys and there's still some really good running backs on the board, but the way it's falling is basically after that Cooks range of wide receivers is gone, then okay, you have the running backs who I like to take at that spot. We're getting a bunch of them. And then once all these positions are looking gross again, all of a sudden Michael Gallup is someone that stands out because, hey, it's an offense that, again, I do think will be fairly run heavy, maybe not the most fantasy friendly passing game in the world. But when we're looking in this range, man, just like, again, having Dak Prescott's number 2 or number 3 wide receiver, looking at guys like Alec Pierce, KJ Osborne, DJ Chark, MVS, I just think Gallup stands out in that range as having some of the highest upside.
Man, you stole my thunder there and made me laugh. I'm working on an article, and that's literally what the premise is. Just going through where the dead zone is in each position, where you want to get your early guys, then bail out for a while and come back late. And literally the wide receiver position starts with Brandon Cooks, the fucking start of your dead zone right there at wide receiver. And you stole my thunder. So.
That's a great article idea though, man. Because honestly, like, and that's why I tell like a lot of my friends will in August, they want to start doing mock drafts and stuff. And hey, I get it. Not everyone's going to be blowing $25, on Best Ball Manias every single day. That's fine. But even if you just go into like the $5, $3 drafts or something like that, man, you get such better reps in best ball than I think going on those ESPN mock drafts with all due respect to ESPN. But you know how it is. Like people are usually doing their first 3 picks and they're not even drafting the rest of the time. And again, it's just doing a handful of those. And then you start to realize exactly what you're saying about those dead zones at each position, where you want to start targeting players, just so, again, you have the sort of dudes going around where you end up picking that you feel better about. So, do 5-6 drafts or just read your article. I guess that'll work too.
Well, and you transition me there into the other one I'm working on, which is kind of the ADP, we'll call it gaps or whatever it is, just because like you said, a lot of these, you go by the Yahoo now. Like I went on Yahoo with my cousin the other day to look over one of his drafts, and some of the fucking ADPs on there, like the top 6 rounds across every site, basically consensus. Once you get there, you'll have a guy ranked 80th, and then you'll have Gallup on the next site ranked 150th. And it's just all over the place. So you're right, though. The best ball and even the small underdog tournaments are a lot more useful than these stupid mock drafts where people aren't really paying attention.
I know. And you can find some huge discrepancies in that site-to-site ADP data once, August gets here and we start getting a little bit more. So I know there's only like true sickos out there in those streets right now, and I'm happy to be, one of them. But man, again, it's just some of these early takeaways. We'll see if they really persist in the redraft land. But, just in general, and I think Cowboys are a good example of this, some of the things we've gone through throughout this episode. But quarterbacks being pushed up more than ever, and wide receivers really going before running backs for the first time in recent memory. It's been good news, I think, for Tony Pollard, who we talked about, sometimes falling into the third. Good news for Michael Gallup. I think CD is priced appropriately. With that said, though, Dak Prescott, Brandon Cooks, those are 2 guys I think are probably just a little bit overvalued right now in terms of their overall ADP.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to end it with. I was going to say, who's your avoid? And I figured it would be Brandon Cooks, just, based on the fact that, like you said, you'd rather take Gallup 60 picks later than Cooks. So,
and hey, credit to the Cowboys for like what they give up, like a 4th and might not even a 4th, like a 5th and a 6th or something. So that is the one thing, when I was like kind of getting to the end of the Cowboys, looking at their win total and things like that. The 3 things I didn't love, and I do think I ended up taking just barely under 9.5 here, because, going from Kellen Moore to Mike McCarthy, that felt more like okay, I need to save my job type of move than like this is actually best for our offense type of move. And then having, your 2 main offseason additions being guys that would have been a lot cooler to add to your team 5 years ago than this year. That said, though, they did not completely overpay for Gilmore or Cook. So from that perspective, did a good job. And hey, man, anytime you got Parsons on that D-line just taking over game after game, I'm sure even if they do go slightly under 9.5, still going to be awfully competitive week to week.
Geez, you're ahead of me on everything. I normally end it with where do they finish in the division and how many wins. So you're under the 9.5. They finish second, or do they can't pass Philly, can they?
I don't think so, man. Although it's been 18 freaking years since we've had an NFC East repeat champion, which is absolutely mind-boggling. And throughout that time, let's see, we have not had the Giants win since 2011. Cowboys obviously got 2021. Washington got 2020. So gonna go with the Eagles. I think they finally snapped that streak. But yeah, it is wild to say that out loud.
All right. That was the Dallas Cowboys. Thank you very much for joining me, Ian. Take a second here. Tell everyone where to find you, as if they don't already know.
Catch me on Twitter at Hartitz. You can find all my work there. Again, pumping out team preview series, articles, and podcasts alongside my guy, Dwayne The Rock McFarland, over on our YouTube channel, Fantasy Life, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen. But yeah, man, fun time. And again, respect the grind of someone else that just, can't find anything else to do, but anything else better to do with our time than talk some ball, man.
Well, mine is just a distraction. So I just, single parent life. It's either this or, find an actual hobby. So this one I just can be a degenerate with. So
cheers, brother.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining me. This has been my thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys with Ian Hartitz. Once again, I'm Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and this has been the Mad Science Lab podcast. Thank you, Ian, and thanks everyone for joining.